No. Because it's hard to tell what the vice president's job is in those situations. Okay?
Is it required for them to live in the White House? Like, if they wanted to live somewhere else, could they?
I don't know. I don't. That was actually brought up about Dayton. Because Mark Dayton has a really nice house, but he lives in the governor's mansion.
Oh, okay.
So, I don't know. Okay, judicial branch. Okay? Judicial branch in the federal courts are made up of the Supreme Court and the federal courts. All right? Their job. Their job is to interpret laws. All right? There is no age requirement for being on the Supreme Court. All right? There is no nationality requirement for serving on the Supreme Court, and you have you serve for life, or until you retire. You gotta die in your seat. You gotta take me to the hospital. No, die.
You gotta do this.
The idea behind this, all right, is by making them serve for life. In theory, a judge does not have to worry about any sort of politics, all right? So they do not have to be concerned about making a decision in order to appease someone. The best example of this right now is John Roberts, who is the current head of the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. He voted in favor of Obama's health care plan. He was appointed by George Bush. He is a conservative judge. Had he done that, it is almost guaranteed that Republicans would have voted him out of his judgeship because it was a definite win for Obama and the Democrats. He voted how he felt it was best, what he thought was right, and so that is the protection you get in this situation. All right? Biggest job of the Supreme Court. You have a question?
Yeah, you gotta be a citizen, right?
Nope.
You don't?
You have to be an American citizen. You don't have to be born.
Oh, that's what I
Yes. Okay? The Supreme Court gets to declare laws constitutional or unconstitutional. They have that right. They took that right in a court case. It was a very good move. It was called Marbury versus Madison. We'll talk about it in a couple weeks. Okay? This is their biggest job, by far. By far. They settle disputes between states. Okay? They will settle disputes involving the United States as a whole. So if there's a foreign issue. And the final piece that they have is that the Chief Justice, who right now is John Roberts, and by the way, the Chief Justice is an appointed position. It is not necessarily that you are the oldest person on the court, the most seasoned. When Roberts got in under Bush, he automatically went into... Do you want a towel?
It didn't, no. It was dry. Dry sneeze.
The Chief Justice presides over impeachment trials. So again, the House can impeach, the Senate can try the impeachment, and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court presides over it. He basically runs it. So if there is an impeachment of the president, every branch of government has a piece in the process. Okay? Make sense? All right. So the Supreme Court can hear laws that are responsible for federal laws. All right? So if it's a state issue, it would not go to the federal courts. If I kill Alyssa, okay, I get tried in a state court. If I kill Alyssa and I take her body to Wisconsin, it has now crossed state lines. It now goes to the federal court system. Okay? If I commit a crime on an airplane, it goes into the federal court system, even though it is maybe just within a state, right? If I'm flying from here to Duluth and I threaten the pilot, right? Or if I say I have a bomb, that would be a federal crime because it is on an airplane, okay? So you get into that situation. What you can do is you can appeal a state decision to the federal courts, but the federal court system does not have to accept your appeals, okay? Yeah.
I have a question. In court cases that are trial by jury,
Yeah.
What does the judge do? Because they got the lawyers and it's decided by the jury.
A judge is there to basically keep everything in order, to determine that the lawyers are following the correct guidelines. They instruct the jury on what happens, and then they determine sentence.
Oh, so it's all up to that judge how long they go there.
There will be recommended sentences by the state, but the judge gets to decide.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What's that? Does it count as a felony? Yes, they would not take anything that was not in that situation. It is unlikely they're going to take like a murder trial, for example. They're not going to take that on appeal. They're going to take something. The reason the Supreme Court will take a case is if they want to look at the constitutionality of something. So, for example, if you have somebody who is on death row and they have been charged and there is an argument that says that there's new DNA that says that they're innocent, right? So that's a specific piece. They would maybe take that, but they're not going to just take, they're not. It would be a federal crime, but it's not going to get up to the Supreme Court. Anytime you cross state lines, it turns into a federal case. And federal cases land you in federal prison. And federal prison is much worse than state prison. It's much more intense.
I've been
Flight on a plane? Federal. Anything on a plane? Federal. Don't screw up on an airplane. Okay? The only crime that is listed in the Constitution, is treason. Okay? That's the only thing that's listed in there as being a crime. The only defined one. If you commit a crime, if you commit treason, only the person who commits the treasonous act can be charged. It cannot be imposed upon relatives, children, anything like that. So if I end up going to work for Al-Qaeda, my children can't be punished by the government for that. Okay? Within the, so that is the judicial branch. Again, pretty simple. Okay? So Article 1, legislative. Article 2 is judicial. Article 2 is executive. Article 3 is judicial. All right? I am going to look at the last couple, and then we'll do amendments the next class, okay? Article 4. Relations of states. We're on page 17.
We don't need to know this is Article 4.
No, I'm just going through the process, okay? Yes, part of the Constitution, yeah. Okay, so this one, okay? The rights of one state should extend to the others. So this is supposed to be the case. It does not always work. For example, you can have different speed limits in different states. You can have different marriage laws in different states. Okay? But if a court case has been determined against you, if you have been charged with something, if you've been deemed a felon, you go to another state, that felony charge follows you to that state. Okay? If you commit a crime in Minnesota and you run to Wisconsin, the state of Minnesota, it is illegal to do that. You can't run away, all right? And you can be extradited. You can be removed from your state and brought back to the state you committed a crime in. All right? They cannot harbor you.
Another state can't harbor another.
Correct.
Kind of like the whole Julian Assange thing.
Mhm.
Julian Assange, the guy who runs WikiLeaks, is I'm pretty sure like was it Brazil,
Mhm.
and U.S. Sweden I think wants to extradite him back because of some sexual assault charges, and people are saying, oh, they just want to get him in Sweden so they can get him with all this WikiLeaks stuff. So it's a mess.
If you go to a foreign country, the most famous person who has run away from the United States for committing a crime is Roman Polanski. He's a movie director. He did a lot of movies. He was charged with sleeping with like a 13-year-old, and he went to France. And he's been in France for like 25 years. He can't come back to the United States. So
he just lives in France.
lives in
How
France.
old is he?
Right now,
France. Why would you-
60s.
I'm confused.
He was an adult. No, and France won't extradite him because they are fine with it. Okay, Article 5, amending the Constitution. It is different than in Minnesota. Okay? The way that it works, okay, and this is on page 18. Okay? There are two ways to do it. To propose a change to the Constitution, you need 2/3 vote in the House and the Senate. Okay? Both of them. Or a national convention called by Congress of legislatures of 2/3 of the states. So basically 2/3 of the state legislatures in the United States would have to come together and say, we want to amend the Constitution. Okay? This is the national one. Okay? In order to pass it, or to ratify it, you need 3/4 of state legislatures. All right, so 3/4 of all the state legislatures, like the Minnesota government would have to do it, or conventions of 3/4 of the states. So as you can see, to amend the Constitution would be very, very difficult to do. Okay, it has only been done 27 times, and the first 10 were done in one sitting. Okay, national conventions. Okay, this is hard to do. So it would be the legislatures would be just like basically if it happened in the state of Minnesota, the convention would be they would all come together. The state legislature, the states would basically. So the senators, for example, right? The Congress of the United States, they can't do it themselves. It has to be done with the states' participation.
So this legislature is just the state.
What's that?
So this legislature is just the state.
In the state, correct. So it's proposed by the federal government, but it's approved by the states. Okay? That makes sense? It can be proposed by the Congress in Washington, but it has to be approved by the states. And the final one that we'll look at today, Article 6. Okay? Article 6 is stating that the Constitution is tops. Okay? We call this federal supremacy. 7. Federal supremacy is that if you have a state law and a federal law, and they come into conflict with one another, the federal law wins out. Which is why when we see the marijuana issue that has come up now, federal supremacy is going to be tested. Because they are going directly against a federal law. Question? Okay, so on Tuesday, we are going to do the amendments. There should be time at the end of that if you have questions about the first 2 days. So if you want to bring those with you, and we'll go from there. Got it?
Federal translation.